Hi, this will be my very first video that I'm going to record. I'm just going to do a quick review, well maybe not quick, but a review of both the novel and the movie by Stephen King, Cujo. Now, for those of you that don't know, Cujo is a book that was written by Stephen King in 1981. He does not remember writing it at all. Apparently he was dealing with alcoholism or drugs at the time, so didn't remember it. He wrote a really good book, in my opinion. Little long in certain cases for the book, and a little too many details about the individuals that didn't really play too much of a part, but very good book overall, especially the way he shifts his characters and the perspectives of them, and I'll get to that later. The movie, Stephen King had a hand in making, and the biggest difference between the movie and the book, besides the characters, is the ending from the novel. Stephen King says that the one thing of Cujo that he would have changed in the book was the ending, and he was able to do that with the movie, which is pretty dang cool in my opinion. So, let's start with the novel. Now, in the novel, it starts off with Once Upon a Time, and this is a thriller, horror, supernatural, and the book gives us a sense of kind of a creepy vibe in the beginning, where we learn about this serial killer policeman who was named Frank Dodd, who ended up killing several women and kids, young girls, and was eventually, the police were almost on him, and he killed himself. And apparently this town, Castle Rock, Maine, made up place, but kind of like you would think of a country New England town, had this fear of this guy. And he became synonymous with scary. And so, Castle Rock, Maine, there are two main families involved in this. There is the main characters, which is our protagonists, that is the Trentons. So we have Vic, the father, owns a marketing company that runs in New York or Boston. I know a big city. The wife and mother, Donna, and their 4-year-old son, Tad, or Tatter. And Tad is very, very scared of monsters in his closet, like most kids at 4 years old are. And he is very worried about monsters in his closet. And so he gets really scared. He screams at night. And his dad comes up with these monster words, which he writes on a piece of paper, puts on Tad's closet door, and says that these words will protect you, Tad. Pretty cool. I never thought about doing that with any kid. So that's a good dad. And we learn through the book that there's a problem with Vic's business, that they represent a cereal company in their marketing, and that people are starting to seem to be getting sick from the cereal. And so there's a very real possibility that his business could fail if the advertising gets pulled, or the cereal turns out that it is making people, especially children, sick. And behind his back, Donna has been having an affair with their quote-unquote carpenter, a friend of the family, basically, somebody who is kind of a wild guy, and not, in my opinion, not really mentally stable. At least, I mean, he can function and everything, but cuckoo a little bit. And she breaks it off with him. She's done. She doesn't want to lose her family, so she tells him she's done with him. He does not take it well, and he sends a note to the house in newspaper letters saying that he has seen and slept with Donna to Vic. And she confirms this when he confronts her about it, and he has to go to New York to deal with his commercial company. And she says, I broke it off with him. I swear, I still love you. I want to stay with you. And he says, listen, I just need to go take care of this. I need a little bit of time to think as well. But at the same time, they're having some problems. Earlier in the book, when they go into a flashback of Tad being about 3 years old, so maybe a year, Vic takes his car, his Jaguar, to a local mechanic rather than the mechanic shop, because he's told he can get a better price there from this guy named Joe Camber. And they're the other main family, the Cambers. You got Joe, the father, he's the mechanic. You got the wife, Charity, and then you got the son, who at the time was 9, becomes 10 years old, his name is Brett. And we learn that he has a very, very big St. Bernard named Cujo, who's about 150 to 200 pounds. And Cujo, when Tad meets him, he just loves him. The dog loves him. In the book, Tad gets licked in the face. He turns away to run and have the dog kind of chase him. He falls over. The dog picks him up by his shirt like he's a little kitten. It's funny as heck. And at one point, Brett makes him like he's riding him, St. Bernard, like a horse. It's pretty funny in the book, picturing it. And Vic, one of his phrases in his head that he's thinking is, it looked like the dog was smiling and laughing. And so we know about the Cambers. They live quite a ways out of town. Joe is not a good dude. He drinks way too much. He is abusive to his wife, emotionally, verbally, and physically. Not a good dude. He treats his son okay, but I mean, I could just see something snapping in Joe at some point, but so then we come to Cujo. He is 5-year-old St. Bernard, and the book actually kind of starts immediately after we meet Cujo, which is when Tad first meets him at 3 years old, maybe a few months later, actually, And Cujo decides to chase after this rabbit. He gets really close to this rabbit. He chases it. He's almost got it. And then the rabbit goes into this hole that turns out to be a kind of a limestone cave. And Cujo can't reach it because the hole is too small for him. So he gets like his head stuck for a minute. He can pull out, but he can't get any further in. And he can still smell the rabbit. And he wants it so bad, so he starts barking and barking. And the echoes disturb these bats that are living there. There's not a lot, but there's a few of them. And it turns out that they are carrying the rabies virus. And one of them bites him on the nose when they realize they can't get out. And so Cujo pulls his head back and he decides, you know what, enough of this rabbit, I'm done. And we learn that Cujo has never received any vaccinations whatsoever. Even with vaccinations, it would be hard to fight rabies that gets you here in the head, especially for a dog. He has had no vaccinations whatsoever. And remember, this is a St. Bernard, 150 to 200 pounds. So, Vic goes on his trip to New York to save his business. At the same time, Charity Camber, the wife of Joe, has been playing the lottery, the local lottery, 50 cents. She wins it. $5,000. And she convinces Joe that she buys him a tool, a very big, expensive tool for him to use on car engines. I think it was like a hoist or something like that. Yes, an engine hoist. And she will take Brett to Connecticut to visit her sister. A vacation. And to show him how other people live besides her husband and themselves. To show a middle-class life, while they are more, I don't want to say low class, but maybe hard scrabble, because they are literally working just to keep food on the table and to make deals. Like, we learn how Cujo came into the family, is that Joe wanted his son to have a friend eventually, and he made a deal with this local grocer that if there was ever, that he would get discounts on dog food for free work on his car that he took care of. So, kind of a hard scrabble family if they're making those kind of deals to have a puppy. I mean, I get it, it's a St. Bernard, but that does make sense, that they're more hand to mouth. So, Cujo slowly in the novel devolves. We see his point of view, we see the point of view of other people, that he's not eating as much, he's in his mind, he's staying away from water because it hurts him, but he's getting more and more thirsty, and in his mind, he's seeing and having these feelings of, I want to bite this, or this hurts, like noises are getting to him a lot more, and people are bugging him a lot more, and he growls a little bit more. And Charity and Brett decide to leave for their vacation. Brett, he goes looking for Cujo in the morning, basically, and Cujo comes out of the fog, because it's a very foggy morning, and Brett can barely recognize this dog that's supposed to be his. He's covered in mud, he's got these red pig's eyes, he's foaming, he barely remembers how this dog is supposed to look. And Cujo is growling and growling. And then he hears Brett's voice saying, "What's the matter, Cujo? What's wrong?" And that is the last time that Cujo, as the good dog he is, turns away and leaves and runs away from Brett. And Brett tells his mom, "I think Cujo's sick." And she says, "Your father will take care of him because he loves Cujo as much as you do. Not only do we need to go, but if we stay and tell your dad about Cujo, then he's going to make us stay." Because it was not a pleasant exchange between her and Joe on convincing him to let her go. And in fact, we learn that Joe, he had gone to his neighbor, who is a World War II vet who has become an alcoholic. He's a complete a-hole. He's living hand to mouth completely. He drinks way too much. His only friends are Joe, Brett, and Cujo. That's it. And he and Joe have decided that they're going to take a big sum of that lottery money and head down to Boston while she's on vacation, her and Brett. And they're going to go to see baseball. They're going to go get a lot of liquor, and they're going to go see a lot of loose women. They're going to go basically whoring. And so Cujo, Brett, and Charity leave. They don't tell Joe. Joe decides he's still going to go. He remembers Cujo, but he's like, never mind. I'll just pour him some food. He'll be okay for a few days, even though he knows that Cujo's just going to eat half right away. He'll eat half the second day. He'll be hungry. But he's like, he'll be okay. So we learn that Cujo goes down to Gary's house. That's the neighbor, the alcoholic. And Gary, in the book, is taking a piss outside. Yeah, real classy. And he hears Cujo and sees him. And we see Gary's point of view in this, his thoughts, that he has a flashback to Germans coming for them in World War II. And he sees Cujo, and he remembers another rabid dog he'd seen that had been a lot more sick than Cujo. But he recognizes rabies, and then a fight ensues between him and Cujo, where Gary puts up a good fight. He actually manages to punch Cujo right in the mouth, like right here, knocking him back. And as soon as Cujo can't smell any fear on this guy, he backs away. And so Gary gets back in his house, he shuts the screen door, and he goes to get his gun. And Cujo busts through the screen door, jumps at Gary, gets him by the throat, and just kills him. Just tears him to pieces. And that's what happened to Gary, Cujo's first kill. Now, Joe comes down to Gary's to find him. To find Gary, he finds the blood on the porch, and he's like, he must have cut himself on a glass, the idiot. And he comes in, he finds Gary's body. He's terrified. He starts vomiting. He's making a hell of a lot of noise because he's just so freaking scared. And he can tell right away when he's trying to get to the kitchen that it was Cujo who did this. That Cujo's gone rabid. And the reason he knows is because he sees a big pile of dog shit. I mean a huge pile. And he knows that Cujo's the biggest dog in Castle Rock, Maine. So he knows it was Cujo. And he goes to find the phone, picks it up. He doesn't think to dial 0. He doesn't think to dial 911. He's too scared. So he's riffling through these pages like that old phone book. And he doesn't hear Cujo coming. And so Cujo growls. Joe gets scared. He drops the phone. Pees himself like anyone would in that situation. And Cujo comes after him. And at first Joe manages to dodge. He gets caught in the kitchen chairs. Cujo's coming for him. Joe fights him like this. He holds a hand to his own throat and tries to grapple Cujo like this in the book. And this is part that really gets to me because you think, wow, Jesus H. Cujo backs away. Then he came for Joe Camber's balls. That's the last we hear of Joe for a long time. So Cujo kills his owner, Joe. Number 2. At the same time, Donna, who's been left with her son Tad, she is driving. Her husband is driving their Jaguar, but it's fine. It's left at the house. But she has this old beat up old Pinto. It's falling apart. The transmission, something's not working right because the car goes like this, and it's not working properly. So she takes it to Joe Camber's house, and of course, Cujo's there again because this was his home. He came back to his house. Don't know why. Just his memory wasn't that bad, at least. But Cujo at this point is absolutely rabid. He is just, and he's covered in mud. He's covered in shit. He's covered in goo. He's covered in blood. His mouth is swollen. His tongue is swollen, so his teeth are always like this. And Donna and Tad are stuck in their old beat-up Pinto. And it won't start. It won't start. So she tries to wait it out. Wait for the battery to lift. To wait for the car to work. Tad is terrified when this dog is there. Because to him, it's the monsters in his closet come to life. I mean, real life. Not just maybe it's there. It is there. Even though his mom says it's just a doggy. It's just a doggy. He knows that this is a monster. And so they wait for several hours, it feels like. In the book, I don't know how long it was they waited, but it felt like several hours just reading it. She turns the key, car starts, and they start to go, and then it dies, and it stays dead. Car's useless. No good. So what happens is a siege. It is a siege, literally. They've got a little bit of food. They've got like half a thermos of milk. And that's it. That's it. And so Tad is stuck in there with a monster. His mom's there, but she doesn't feel she can do anything. And throughout the book, she's debating in her head what to do. She doesn't know what happened to the Cambers. She doesn't know when the mailman's coming because he hasn't arrived. And there's this debate in her head about the front door, the porch door. You know how some of the old porches of the old days had the opening here and then like that? Like this? Yeah. And the stairs going up? There's a little thing underneath it that Cujo goes under sometimes. Most of the time he was staying over by the garage, which is a very, very separate from the house. Like those old barns that you think of when you think of a mechanic place in the country. That's exactly what it is. That's where the garage is. And she's debating with herself. She's a very athletic person. She could run for the door and make it. She's sure she can make it to the door. But what if it's locked? If it's locked, she can't make it back to the car before Cujo gets to her. And then Tad is alone. Completely alone. No food, no water, no mom. And this debate goes in her head. And at certain points, she's just about ready to try. Cujo comes back. He just showed back up. Turns out he had gone down to the creek to just go to it. And we hear in his mind, he wants to bathe in it, he wants to drink it, but he also wants to kill it, he wants to bite it, he wants to shit in it. All these crazy thoughts are just like this in his head. And in his mind, we can see that he's blaming all these people that he's come in contact with for his sickness. They're the ones that made him sick. They're the ones that made him hot. They're the ones that are causing him this pain. They're the ones that if he bites them, if he kills them, he'll feel better. So what happens is that at one point, finally, when she thinks that she might have a shot of making it. Well, I'm sorry. Before that, the phone has been ringing. Because in the book, Brett and Charity, especially Brett, are calling to check in on Joe and especially to ask about Cujo. Brett is worried about Cujo. And obviously nobody's answering. Cujo breaks down the window at one point, and he's trying to get at the phone. It stops ringing. He gets back down. And then another time it happens, Cujo doesn't attack the phone. He goes after the car. And he basically rams into it, just headbutts it, cracks the window with his paw or his entire body. I'm not exactly sure which in the novel, but he uses his weight to just buckle in this door so that it's just really hard to open. And that plays a role later, and you can't see out the window very clearly anymore because there's such a crack in it. And Tad is just going nuts, screaming and screaming and screaming. Doing this, he just can't stop. And Donna can't do anything except try to hold him. Try to calm him. And so sorry. What finally happens is that Donna gets out of the car. She doesn't know where Cujo is. The door barely stays open. She can barely get the door to open. It's so bent in from Cujo's ramming. And when she finally does get it open for a minute, she actually shuts it back because she's so just disoriented, so scared of leaving this sanctuary. Despite how hot it is. It is a hot day in Maine. And it's hot in that car. You can't lower the windows. You can't turn it on. You're stuck. And it is hot. Sitting in a car on a hot day, no air conditioning, no way to lower the windows. That, and no drink. Bad. So she gets out of the car, shuts the door behind her. She knows it's going to stay stuck. So she picks up a bunch of rocks and throws them at the front of her car because she's suspicious. She doesn't know where Cujo is, but she thinks he might be in front of the car. She throws these stones because it's a stone driveway. She hears the first two click, click with rocks. She doesn't hear the third one because it does hit Cujo. He is in front of the car, but he's waiting for her. I guess his animal instincts still exist because in his mind he's saying, wait, she's coming, let her see me. And when she finally does see him, he does go after her. She fights him. She manages to grapple him away, and then she opens the door, and she's trying to get back in, and somehow Cujo ends up getting at her, and he gets at her here, at her stomach, and he's biting at it, and he's basically trying to get at her belly, and the reason he's able to is because she's taken off her shirt because it's so hot. So she's in her bra and her skirt, and Tad is in his underwear. And as soon as he sees this fight that Donna is having with Cujo, all he sees is this monster in his mother's lap, in the car, right in front of him, less than 2 feet away. It's terrifying just to imagine yourself in that situation, let alone a 4-year-old kid. So Donna is fighting Cujo off. In the book, again, I'm going to show you the differences in the movie after. Cujo bites at her stomach. She fights him off and then grabs the door by the handle and starts whamming it, pulling it and whamming it. I don't want to say ramming because whoom, whoom, whoom into Cujo each time. And it's hitting him in the head here, like around the neck area, around the head. And Cujo seems to back off for a second, but then he bites her in the leg, on her left leg, and starts just tearing it off and pulls a big chunk out. And then she finally pulls on the door one last time with all her strength, and finally Cujo's had enough and he falls back. And she manages to get the door shut. And now Donna says, "I've got rabies." And her leg is badly hurt. She bandages it up as best she can with the gauze, but that she's got in the first aid kit in the car. But she's really hurt. She can't run to the door anymore, at least not the way she thought. She knows it. And so the siege continues. All this time, Brett and Charity are on vacation. Vic, he's trying to save his business account, but he can't stop thinking about his wife. And maybe he's been calling the house this whole time, trying to catch up on her, trying to check in. He's getting no response. Nothing. Obviously, we know why. He doesn't. And so eventually he just says to his business partner and best friend, he says, "Listen, this is what happened with Donna. I need to go back." And so he goes back early. And another point of view we get at one point is that while both Vic and Donna are away, the man she was having an affair with, Stephen Kemp, I'm going to call him Steve. No, I'm going to call him Kemp, sorry. He is not very happy with Donna, obviously, and he wants to get back at her still. He shows up at her house expecting to find her. When he doesn't, he proceeds to destroy the house. He takes knives out, he cuts stuff down, he smashes the glass on the first floor, he breaks the pictures, goes upstairs and he messes up their bed in a very, he comes on the bed. He doesn't do anything else upstairs, but he comes on the bed and he leaves a note saying, "I left you a present upstairs, sweetheart." And so in the book, the cops show up at the house because they've heard about a disturbance. I forget exactly how they heard about it, but I'm assuming somebody called in all the noise. And they find what happened, and they call Vic. And he comes down there, and he says, "I know who did this. It was Kemp, and he's probably got my wife and kid because they're nowhere to be found, and neither is their car." And through all this, they're trying to figure out what's going on. At the same time, at the same time, Charity and Brett are on their vacation. They're learning about, Brett is learning about different things, and he's learning a different perspective, but he also brings up how his dad looks at things, which is how his dad says, "Well, this guy, he bought a pinball machine, and he got somebody else to fix it for him, and he calls it his own work, whereas Dad would have just fixed it up himself." And Charity says, "Well, not everybody can do what your dad does, but this is another way to be proud that you have this thing." And he said, Brett is not quite in line with this. And Charity is very scared for her son turning out like her husband. And we learn through this that one morning at her sister's house that Brett was a sleepwalker as a young child. 6, 8, 9 years old, he was a bit of a sleepwalker. And he hadn't had one for a couple years, a sleepwalking episode. And she watches Brett get up one morning and he's sleepwalking, and she sees him doing something. And what he's doing is a ritual that I think most of us are familiar with, which is he's getting up to feed the dog. He's getting up to feed Cujo. He's taking out the gravy bowl, and he's doing this. And he's saying stuff as well. He says, Cujo's not hungry no more. Cujo's not hungry no more. And he also says, look in the weeds, which we later learn about. And so that's a very creepy thing that Brett said that in his sleepwalking. Very strange. Creepy. And back to Donna and the Pinto. Vic tells the policeman she might have taken the Pinto to Joe Chambers to get it fixed. I told her to go there, but maybe the Pinto's there. And so they send a sheriff, who we learned was the one who first suspected Frank Dodd, the serial killer, of being the main suspect. And his name is Sheriff George Bannerman. I'm just going to call him Bannerman. He gets there. He sees the car. And in the novel, he immediately gets out of the car. He doesn't radio in because he's trying to see if there's anybody alive. He can't see their heads because they're both Donna and Tad are asleep. And we learned earlier in the book that after the attack, that Tad had a seizure, and that's what Donna had to do. She had to grab his tongue and get it out of his mouth, and he bit her on the fingers, like down to the bone. Ouch. And so Tad's in bad shape too. He's having this fever sleep. Like he can barely sleep. He's so hot. And so Bannerman goes out of his police vehicle and checks on them. And when he can see their head, that's when Cujo gets him. Cujo charges at him. He had hidden from the police car because the noise of the car bugged him. It pained him. And he hid further away. And so he attacks Bannerman. And Bannerman tries to get out his pistol when Cujo's charging him. That 1 second is just a little too late. Pulls it out, and then it gets like that, like you see in the movies. Boom, 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 boom. And that's when Cujo gets him by the intestines. Basically, he mauls him under there, and he makes Bannerman's intestines come out. He's basically gutted him. And Bannerman, in his head, he's thinking, okay, get to the car. And he's thinking all these random things, like, did I see my child's homework? Did I make love to my wife last night? And he's also thinking, okay, I got to my car. I pulled out my shotgun. I shot the dog. I called for backup. We're good. That happens in his head in about 3 seconds. At the same time, Donna gets out of the car. And Cujo goes after her. She gets back in the car without getting bit again. Cujo's going after the car while Bannerman runs for his police cruiser, but he's just a little too slow. Because he can't run properly with holding his intestines in. He can't run properly. So Cujo gets him, knocks him away from the car door, like you would think of in movies, like boom, like that. And he basically finishes off Bannerman and kills him. Starts playing with his body, a toy. Really, poor Bannerman. So, at that point, Vic has a revelation when he's looking in Tad's closet. Supernatural thoughts, like, what's going on? And he learns that Kemp has admitted to trashing the house. The police have questioned him. But they don't think he has his wife and kid. They think he's telling the truth about that, but he's like, well, what else could it be? And that's when he thinks, oh, the Chambers, I gotta go there because Bannerman has not checked in. The police said that. I gotta go there. And so he gets in his Jaguar and he heads that way as fast as he can. At the same time, Donna, she realizes Tad's on his last legs. He's not moving. She doesn't even think he's breathing. She can't really tell. She can barely hear him. So she gets out of the car one last time and shuts it behind her. She knows she's not getting back in that car. And she heads for a baseball bat that she saw in the grass, the weeds. And by this time, both her and Cujo are in bad shape. She's got her leg all chewed up. She's got furrows in her stomach. And she's dehydrated. She's hungry. She is but she's in mama mode. Mama bear protection mode. And I'm talking like life or death. She knows the moment she got out of that car that last time, either she was going to come back and get Tad out, or she wasn't going to come back at all. Now, she had thought about going for the bat before, but she didn't know what she could do and whether she could win, because Cujo was still pretty fit. At this point, by the time the final showdown happens, she's in bad shape, and Cujo, he's all matted with blood, yes, but he's also like almost missing an ear. It's like hanging on a piece of flesh down. He's really hurt because of the door that was banging into him, and the rabies is really affecting him. So he's not in great shape either. And so at this point, the final showdown happens. She beats him with the bat. He keeps trying to dodge it, but he keeps getting hit with it. She's hitting him as hard as she can with this bat that is held together by this tape, that black duct tape. And it's barely holding this wiggling bat. The bat is, she's holding it here, it's wiggling up here, the fat end of it. It's barely holding on. And she's hitting this 150, 200-pound St. Bernard with a bat. And finally, she gets in one more hit. The bat breaks. She's left with about 18 inches of like a piece of wood. A big splintered piece of wood. 18 inches, foot and a half. And Cujo drags himself up one last time. Like, he doesn't get up. He drags himself up. Lunges for her when she says, "Come on then." And she sticks. In the book, this is where we're getting more differentiation. In the book, she sticks that I guess wand is the best thing. It basically becomes like a miniature spear, because she stabs it into one of Cujo's eyes, his right eye. Just stabs it in there. And a really great quote from the book, his eye made an unimportant popping sound, like when you squeeze a grape between your fingers. And Cujo bites her arm, tries to get her throat, but she shoves him off to the side, and he breathes one last time, and he's dead. Cujo's dead. She grabs the fat end of the bat that had flown away and starts beating him with it. At the same time, Vic manages to get to the Cambers house. He finds Donna doing what she's doing, and he says, "Honey, it's me." And she recognizes him, and he's like, "Where's Tad? Where's Tad?" And she says, "He's in the car. Get him out. He's in the car." Vic goes to the car, and he pulls out Tad, and Tad has died. He died of dehydration. He just couldn't make it. It's too long. Donna doesn't want to believe this. She does mouth-to-mouth, tries to do compressions. When Vic tries to help her, she growls at him. He backs away. He goes up to the front door, breaks the glass, opens it. The door was unlocked. The front door was unlocked. So that's a mystery right there, whether she could have made it or not. Just play it over in your head. And he calls the police. They bring an ambulance. They bring police officers. One of the orderlies from the ambulance tries to take Donna away from Tad. She bites him. He gets treated for rabies too. And then the orderlies come again, and they try to inject her with a sedative. And then these police officers arrive, and they have to help. And finally, another officer arrives. The head police officer, I guess, of the department rather than the sheriff. When he's told that George Bannerman is dead, he's crying, but he still has to help Don. He has to get Donna, so he joins the other officers, and they grab her, and they hold her back while they give her a sedative. And then they start to take Tad away on one of the stretchers, and she manages to break free, but instead of going to Tad, she goes over to the dog, and she starts beating him with the fat end of the bat again. And then she collapses. And so what happens next is they take Vic, Donna, and Tad to the hospital, obviously, to get treated for rabies and her wounds. Vic finds the monster words before they leave, and he just crumples them up and throws it away. And while that's happening, a vet arrives to take care of Cujo's body. What they do is to check for rabies. I learned this in the book, is that they take a saw, they cut off the dog's head, and they test the brain, and they burn it. And what they do is all the police officers turn away. They don't want to see this. She takes a bone saw, cuts off Cujo's head, puts it in a garbage bag, plastic garbage bag, and it is tested for rabies. And we get a synopsis, basically, an epilogue kind of that. Charity Camber gets a phone call from the police that Joe is dead and that it was Cujo. How's she going to tell Brett? And Donna and Vic reconcile. It's not easy for them. They're distraught, but they decide to try and move forward because they realized how much they cared for each other and Tad. So that's the end of there's some newspaper articles about what happened, which is like 3-day siege between Mother and Killer St. Bernard. Things like that. So Charity and Brett, a year or two later, they have gotten another dog. First question Brett asks, has he gotten his shots? And it's a little Heinz dog, a very tiny fluff ball. And doesn't have a name for almost a year. They name him Willie. And they've decided to keep their house. They haven't been sued because they were just as shocked. And then we hear the synopsis for Cujo, which to me is very powerful, which is that his remains were taken to the waste factory and burned and then just thrown away. And the synopsis is that Cujo had always tried to be a good dog. He would have fought and died for the boy, the woman, and the man. He would have died for them if need be. And he was just struck down by fate, the devil, or a virulent disease called rabies. And it had nothing to do with his free will. He had no choice. So that's how the novel ends. And that's how Stephen King wrote it. Now, that's pretty powerful for a book. I've never read any other Stephen King novel. I really don't have that much interest in the supernatural or in thrillers or horrors. I've read a couple, but that was a pretty good book. Now, the movie does not differentiate that much. You don't see as much of the characters, especially those that are in other areas, the minor characters that, like, there are some that don't exist at all. There's a few, like the mailman, who shows up in maybe 2 scenes in the movie just as a notice, like, oh, this guy, he gave some information, blah, blah, blah. And it's pretty fascinating. The beginning half of the movie, maybe 45 minutes to an hour of the movie are just character development for Donna, Vic, Tad, and some of the other characters like Joe, Brett. And it basically comes down to the same thing, all these different things adding up. In the movie, the only real difference is the ending, but it's really important. In the movie, when the siege starts, the music, my God, the music during the siege for Cujo is just amazing. And the way they stage the attacks, the different attacks, it's always a surprise where Cujo's going to come from. You're never entirely sure. They carried out that music just long enough to where you think they're safe, and then boom, like that. I do not recommend watching this movie by yourself, especially if you're a kid. Do not. Even a teenager, I still recommend watching it in a group, just because it was that freaking intense to me. I think I watched it when I was a younger teen, probably 15, 16. I know that seems like a middle age, but I didn't grow up as quick. But in the movie, Cujo does kill Gary and Joe very much the same way he does in the book. And Brett has this same encounter with Cujo where Cujo turns away for one last time. That's the last time Cujo is a quote-unquote good dog. And then Donna and Tad are stuck in the Pinto, and it's very scary. And you get the feeling, you can feel the claustrophobia. You can almost feel the heat. Like you want to have a drink while you're watching it. It's that good. At least for me, and I think for many others. And so when Donna first gets out of the car, the main thing is how they go after the dog's perspective and how they film the fighting between her, Donna, and Cujo. Because it's we as people see human-on-human violence, we're kind of used to it. We're like, whatever. Especially us Americans. But human-on-animal violence is much harder for people to watch, which I get it. It's tough, but I guess I didn't have as much trouble watching it simply because I knew this was a rabid dog rather than a thinking dog. That's just me. But in the first fight between Donna and Cujo, he does still get in the car. She actually manages to get away from him, not by throwing him away, but by kicking his balls or kicking his dick. Ouch. That would hurt any dog. And so she gets in the car, but they can't show her doing this with the door because that would be extremely difficult to do with a mechanical dog. You can't use a real one. And they had a man in a dog suit they could have used, but it just wouldn't have worked as well. So what they did was they had her fight him off using a thermos. She would hit him on the nose with it because that's where he's very weak. She would hit him like this, on the muzzle, on the head, and it would make him back off. He still did bite her leg. He got her stomach. Tad is screaming all this time during the entire thing. And finally, Cujo leaves the car. She shuts the door. And we get this great image of the camera. You can just imagine the camera, but you can't. You can imagine the camera after, but not during, where you see Donna, and it's slowly going like this inside the car, slowly, speeding up, and you just sense that's how hopeless it is. It is horrifyingly awesome how well they do that. You feel like you're there with them, and you can't do anything. Very scary. So, sorry. The sheriff does arrive still. Same plot points. Sheriff arrives, he hears Cujo in the garage. And he goes to check it out. Cujo mauls him. He tries to fight off Cujo, like with an old boot. He doesn't get away. He does get mauled by Cujo. Cujo kills him. Don does try to get out of the car. It's too late. The guy's dead. His gun does go flying away. And we've seen throughout the movie or throughout the scenes where we have them under siege, and Cujo does go after the car the same way. He rams it, he breaks it, he bites off one of the door handles. The phone sets him off. There is one scene when the phone rings during the night where there's one mistake I see, just one major mistake, even though it actually makes it a little creepier in my mind, which is that the dog breaks the window, the phone stops ringing, dog stops, then you see, out of the frame, you see a hand pull him down by the collar. Creepy. When I first saw it, creepy. It wasn't until later that I realized they did mess up, that they just pulled, they were using trained dogs, so they just pulled the dog by the collar. Just that. Just a mistake. But it was scary watching it for the first time. That was the only one major glitch I saw, other than a few tiny things. But in the movie, again, Donna gets back out of the car one last time. She's going to try and run for the door. Cujo comes out from under the porch. And then she runs for the bat. And she says the same thing. Well, come on then. And how they film this, because we don't want to see animals getting hurt, even if it is a rabid one, is that they frame it from the dog's point of view, like she's swinging at the camera, basically, I'm assuming. And you can hear the impacts because they either add in the sounds or she is actually hitting something, but it's basically like this. They're filming it like this, and the bat's coming like this and this and this, and she's hitting him. And then the bat does break. Cujo lunges one last time, but it impales him, not through the eye, but through the stomach. And he seemingly dies right then and there. Right in her lap. She throws him off. She goes and grabs the policeman's revolver. And she can't bring herself to shoot, apparently, a dead dog. So she uses the butt of the revolver, to break the Pinto car's window, because the doors aren't opening. She can't get them open. So she breaks the window, takes Tad out, takes him inside, and starts putting water on him and doing CPR. And this is where the major difference comes in. The major difference. And that Stephen King himself said, I'm glad I changed it for the film. Tad starts breathing. He's alive. He's awake. And it seems like everything is great. Just perfect. No. Cujo, one last time, comes barreling through the glass window, just like you see in the movies. She grabs the revolver as he's coming at her one last time. Bang. You don't see it happen. We just see the gunshot. And at that moment, Vic does arrive on the scene. Donna steps out on the porch, all ragged, Tad in her arms, alive. Vic comes up to her, takes Tad, and then the film ends. Just them standing there, reunited as a family. So, huge difference in how the movie ends to the book. And I'm actually very grateful for that. I mean, I can understand why King wrote it the way he did. He was dealing with alcohol and drugs and being in a very bad place. And he says he doesn't even remember writing Cujo and that he wishes he did, so he could go back and change the ending. But the movie gives him a chance to do that, which is really interesting to me, that you can actually have two endings to the same thing because you wanted it that way rather than the directors wanting it that way. And obviously the directors made the best choice, I think, because it's more of an uplift rather than so sad. We don't hear about what happened to the other Cambers. We don't get that synopsis. We just know that Cujo has killed 3 people. He barely managed to survive. Tad did. He managed to make it because of his mother's courage and her desire to save her son. And I forgot to mention this. There's a great scene that they almost didn't put in the movie because they thought that it would take away a lot of the mothers and the women who would watch it, which is that at one point, Tad is screaming. His mom's holding him like this, and he's burying his head in her stomach, saying, "I want my daddy, I want my daddy, I want my daddy, I want my daddy." And she finally screams at him, "Okay, I'll get your daddy." And Dee Wallace, who plays Donna in this, she's the only actress name I remember from this movie. I'm sorry. She performed it to a T, or to a D in this case, Donna. She does it fantastic. And I think I've seen my mom lose it with me and my brother and my sister. Like, it's not like she hates us. It's that we've just driven her straight up a wall, straight into a corner where she can't do anything but yell. And that is so relatable because I know I've been in a place nowhere near as intense where I'm so annoyed with either my siblings or with other crying babies and you just want to get away. You know you can't. You have to do something. You lose it for a second as a mom. I get it. And you know what? Absolutely beautiful performance. Absolutely beautiful. Dee Wallace carried this movie to the end. And I am so grateful for that change in the end, for keeping Tad alive. Because it's hard to imagine that child not making it. It just doesn't make sense. And that's why you're so happy that it does make sense in the end. Now, this was a very long review. I attribute it to it being a book and a movie review. Hopefully I will be able to separate those from now on. From TV, movies, books, mangas. I hope this was good for a first time. Thank you very much. My name is Andrew. Peace out.